Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Ole Consulting Quarterly PM Roundtable. My name is Ade Adeyemi. I'm the host and CEO at Ole Consulting. If you're joining us for the first time, Ole Consulting is a management consulting firm specializing IT professional services in the areas of staffing, training, and project delivery services. So we specialize in leadership and talent management services, and we also provide training and employment placement services for individuals that are looking to get into the fields of project management, business analysis, and agile profession. Our mandate for the PM Roundtable is to create an avenue where our IT professional community can share information, network, discuss best practices, and present opportunity for career growth. Ultimately, our goal is to raise leaders, and we definitely hope that today's roundtable will further that agenda. Our topic for today is redesigning your career blueprint, strategic planning for long-term success. This is a very interesting topic, very important topic, one at that. We are thrilled to have you all join us today as we embark on a journey to unravel the secrets of successful career planning. Whether you're just starting out, contemplating a major shift, or looking to elevate your current path, today's session is crafted to provide you with the insights, tools, and inspiration needed to strategically design your career for long-term fulfillment and success. Together, we will explore how to navigate the complexities of career decisions, overcome obstacles, and seize opportunities with confidence. We have on the call with us today two esteemed panelists that bring with them a wealth of knowledge, experience, and insights that will illuminate our discussion. So without further ado, let's introduce the panel. Let's meet the panelists. The first panelist we're going to be introducing today is Meryl Africa. Meryl, welcome, Meryl.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here.
Okay,
So a little bit about myself. I guess, are you going to go through the intro? Or
No,
did
no,
you
no,
want me
please, no, please go ahead, Meryl.
So I'll just keep it short and brief. So I am a payments professional with over a decade of experience. I've worked at some of Canada's largest financial institutions as well as Big Four consulting in a variety of roles. So I've done everything from commercial banking sales to product management, regulatory affairs, innovation work that I've done in the payment modernization space. And that's predominantly on my financial services side. And then I've also got almost like a secondary career, I guess you could say, in social impact, where I've done a lot of work around advising and supporting executives of Fortune 500 companies on DEI strategies, talent placement, helping them to understand how they can have a more diverse talent of candidates in their pipeline. So that's a lot of the work that I've done in my role as president of CAUFP. And that has led me to do things like advocating for our community in spaces like BNN, CBC Weekend Business Panel, as well as issuing reports around diversity in corporate Canada. So excited to be here and to share my story with everyone.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have you as well, Meryl, and can't wait to learn from you and to pick your brain as to some of the dynamics, interesting topics we're going to be covering today. Thank you so much, Meryl. Our next panelist comes with a wealth of knowledge as well as a unique perspective when it comes to goal setting and well-being. Let's welcome Crystal Samuels. Welcome, Crystal.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ade. So happy to be on this panel with Meryl. And a little bit about me. So I am a public servant. I have been a public servant for over 20 years. Started off as an intern out of university, and I've had progressive roles throughout my time in the public service. I would say that my skill set is around project management and leading transformational change. There's many things that comes with a transformation, but I think that's the key thing. And I'm also in the technology space, really using technology as an enabler to bring these transformations to life. So another thing that's interesting about me is my life outside of the corporate world is I'm a meditation and wellness coach. Meditation has been something that has been a part of my life since I've been young. I would say well over 20 odd years. And I didn't know how it was transforming my life over these years until I really did a self-reflection, I would say in 2020, and how much it really has been a tool that has gotten me to where I am today. So that's just a little bit about me, and looking forward to sharing with all of you.
Yeah. Oh, well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Crystal. We're excited. We're looking forward to learn from you as well. We're going to get right into the conversations around strategic career planning. How do we talk about, where do we start from? What's the foundation? What are some of the obstacles along the way? And how do we strategically pivot? There's a lot of questions that's going to be answered on the call today. So we're going to dive right into the conversation. Welcome. Hello, everybody. So we are excited, and we're going to dive right into the conversation. The first piece we're going to get into, we're going to start with some foundational questions, which really, when it comes to career blueprints or career roadmap, and you're talking about how to build your career, I'm going to start with you, Crystal. And this question I'm going to ask is really about the struggles people face when it comes to ambition and practicality, what is attainable, what is ideal, and also with the difficulty of aligning your career goals with personal values, and which is also comes with the uncertainty on how to set achievable goals and also fulfill aspirations. So question for you, Crystal, is how do you balance dreaming big with setting realistic career goals? And what steps do you take to align your career blueprints with your core values?
Okay. So I really love this question. So I want to start off by telling everyone that's listening, dream big. Do not limit your dreams. Just start from there. And claim what you want now. You may not know how you're going to get there. Oftentimes that one of my coaches will say the how is none of your business. Just dream big. What do you want to achieve? And when you start from that place, you'll be able to make the right, I would say, next steps will present itself to you. And in dreaming big, another thing that I would say is, as you are figuring out starting with the end in mind, realize who you need to be at that end state and start, I would say, performing and acting like that person today. So I'll give you a small example here, is that I reflected with my mom last night, and my mom reminded me that when I first entered into the government, she said to me, Crystal, I remember you told me that you're going to climb the walls of government. And it was really led by the fact that she was like, your room's messy. But what that was demonstrating to me early is that my room's messy and I am going to climb the walls of government to give myself the means so that I don't need to clean my room. But the point is, I was dreaming big, right? And so from that perspective, you need to then start with the micro goals. Okay, so what's the next step that I need to do? And really be able to start with, if you can't do a year, start with 3 months. And what are the steps that you need to take to get to that next step in your career goal? And make sure you do have your core values at sight. And that's going to take a lot of reflection, because oftentimes we don't take the time to do those core values. So dream big, let your values drive you. And then from there, you make those small micro goals that can get you that one step closer to your dream. And maybe what you need to do is put into 90-day goals. Maybe in 90 days, I want to accomplish a project, or I want to be, recognized for a particular work that I'm doing. What are the steps and who do I need to connect with? And what is the work ethic that I need to present to be able to meet that, for example, 90-day goal? And everything is incremental. It's a journey. It's a journey. And I cannot stress how much it's a journey. Like I'm here 20 years in the OPS. It's a journey.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks so much, Crystal. And I think it's really important, like you mentioned, the emphasis on the fact that it's a journey. And you talked about dreaming big. And I think most people often think about what's that immediate goal that I can achieve. But and it's a concept of there's layers to it. And there's a bigger picture goal, but then there's goals that you want to achieve within 6 months. And then we also have daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. So there's levels to it. If you can maybe just shed more light on that concept.
So I would like to say as well that as you are layering those or actually determining what those goals are, make sure you start writing things down. So I think that is one of the key things is that start with where you are now. Just take an inventory of what you have right now. Okay. And taking that inventory of what you have right now, what can you accomplish? And make sure you start to write these things down. So I remember at one point, I said I wanted to become a manager, and I gave myself 18 months to do so. 18 months. And I literally had a map, a plan of who I would speak to, what I need to tell folks with respects to where I want to go. Verbalize it. If you don't verbalize it, people don't read minds. And then from there, you take those, you start checking off those boxes off of your plan to get, like for me, it was to get into management within 18 months, right? And I would say, yeah, just start where you are, take the inventory, and then make the plan and execute, follow through. Don't give up.
Super, super. Well, we're going to come back to you, Crystal. There's a lot to take away from that. I love the fact that you mentioned verbalizing it, because I've seen scenarios where if you don't speak up, you don't get recognized. And I think, that part is extremely important. Very simple, but powerful. Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say you're verbalizing it for yourself too, because it's almost like you got to get that belief within yourself too, that you can do this. And then obviously you're letting other people know too, so that they can start to remember, make connections and open doors if necessary.
Absolutely. Verbalizing for yourself is a reminder. You're telling yourself what exactly you want. And it's also the subconscious mind operates in a very, very dynamic way. Again, thank you so much, Crystal. We're going to keep going. We're going to come to you next, Meryl. Meryl, this question is really about the resistance that people face when it comes to changing and the fear or comfort with the status quo. When we talk about change, new career path, the challenges involved with recognizing when and how to pivot your career, and learning from failures or missteps in career planning. Now, so question for you is, can you share a time when when revisiting and adjusting your career goals or path significantly impacted your professional journey? What are some of the lessons learned from that experience?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I didn't cover when I did my intro was the fact that I'm originally from South Africa. So I immigrated to Canada about 15 years ago. That was before we had all these wonderful newcomer programs that you're seeing. And I think there was a little bit more of a uphill battle for newcomers when it came to getting into corporate and getting the types of roles that we're looking for. So when I came, I was a new graduate with a Bachelor of Information Systems, and my intent was always to build this career in tech. When I arrived in Canada, mistake number one, I started in Winnipeg. No offense to anybody who's from Winnipeg out there, but that was like sort of my first stop on the journey. I would say my tour across Canada, because I've lived in 4 different provinces. And there was no support, not a lot of support for newcomers, and two, there was really no tech ecosystem out there. So I quickly obviously had to adjust because I came at a time when it was our last recession. And I just needed to fit into whatever role I could get. And that started my career in financial services. I started with a fintech called Mogo. At that time, they did payday loans, and now they've transitioned into things like lines of credit, mortgages, crypto, and all that good stuff. But that really sort of started this career that I had within the financial services ecosystem. I had to adjust to the fact that I was not going to have this technical career that I thought that I was going to have. I started off in financial services and I started off in sales. So I wasn't even in like a tech line of business. And so moving up and wanting to make more money, starting at $11 an hour, I realized, okay, I need to take the skills that I'm learning here and adjust that, right? So that's how I got into commercial banking. Worked there for a couple of years. And I figured, okay, I love sales, but I don't want to do this my whole life. So how do I take that and leverage those skill sets that I'm learning to be able to position myself for something, may not necessarily be a tech role, but it's something tech adjacent, which is how I got into product management. And that's kind of how I snowballed into the different roles that I've had ever since then. So I would say the biggest lesson that I learned is one, have a career plan in place, but when the environment that you're in does not support that. So for example, in that case, I'm not somewhere where there's a tech ecosystem. I'm not somewhere where I'm getting that kind of experience. Learn how to roll with the punches. And I think sometimes I meet, especially a lot of newcomers, they can be very rigid in what they want because they did certain work back home and they want to only do that. And I always tell them, look at different avenues that you can pursue, alternative careers or alternative paths to get to that career. Because sometimes if you are working in this line of business, you might have to zigzag and get there 5 years later. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest lesson that I learned. Also, don't underestimate the types of skill sets that you can learn in those alternative roles. If it wasn't for those sales roles early in my career, I would not have been able to be a salesperson and sell myself into product, right? I would have not been able to use that to sell myself eventually into my last role, which was in management consulting, having no consulting experience because I created a network. I knew how to sell. I knew how to talk to executives. So sometimes when you're not, the plans are going, according to plan, roll with the punches and just embrace all the skill sets that you can learn along the way.
Amazing, amazing. I love the roll with the punches. I think it's extremely important because a lot of people, and I think we'll talk about immigrant professionals, internationally trained professionals that are new in Canada, and they find themselves in situations and circumstances that is not the most ideal. And when we talk to folks in our program, and we'll talk about career planning, and I said, bring your full self to the table. We want to know, what have you done previously? What are some of your past experiences? Even if you're trying to pivot into a new career path, don't write off your past experiences. There's some uniqueness to your journey that is absolutely unique to you than anybody else. So I love that, embracing those experiences and skill set that you develop along the way. Fun fact, I also came to Canada as an international student, and I went to University of Winnipeg. So lived in Winnipeg. Um, yeah, awesome. We're gonna thanks so much, Meryl. Thanks again. Really insightful. We're gonna go to you next, Crystal. Crystal, this question here is really, I like the question just simply for the fact that it talks about the lack of self-understanding that hinders career growth, and when people will talk about external pressures, and finding methods to increase self-awareness for better career decisions. So the question here is, how important is self-awareness in crafting a career blueprint? And can you share strategies for gaining this insight?
Okay. So it is, I would say, fundamental or integral or just key to be very self-aware. You have to know what you are for and what you're not for in order to, move through life. And I think you have to, before you even start building out or crafting a career blueprint, start with the honest self-reflection. It can be some hard internal work, but one, do that internal self-reflection and be honest. Do I have these skills? Do I not have these skills? Or, as Meryl had mentioned, and yourself a day, really think about and write down and inventory everything that you have done. And sometimes you need to bring it to someone else for them to point out the fact that you do have this skill, right? But either way, have that honest self internal reflection about where you're at and what you bring to the table. And don't be afraid to seek the feedback. So that's where I was going next, about receiving feedback from others. Seek it, receive it, make sure it's from trusted sources. I think that's very important for me to caveat that you trust the sources that you're getting the feedback from, but make sure it's not always someone that will truly give you feedback, not giving you the feedback you want to hear all the time, right? And I would say some practices, and I know this is around learning and reading more, around being open to new perspectives, so that as you are seeking and becoming more aware of what's happening internally, you can potentially connect in to what is happening externally, right? And so just taking that time to be honest with yourself, reflecting, seeking feedback. Silence is a good thing. So I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit and say that a lot of times I use my meditation practice as a tool to just silence myself. And sometimes there is, you would say, responses, answers. Some people want to call it epiphanies, or maybe it's just nothing. But the point is having the opportunity to be in silence sometimes, to really hear and reflect and take that time for yourself. Now, in crafting your blueprint, so as you reflect and you understand and you become more self-aware, I would say crafting a career plan is more than just the career plan. I would say there's things like making sure you have the personal development pieces in there. How do I need to develop in order to achieve this ambitious goal I have for my career? Make sure you are very deliberate. Sometimes it's conferences, sometimes it's reading, sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's courses, sometimes it's job shadowing, sometimes it's mentorship. What is that self-development that you need to put in place to as you craft your career strategy? And then there's some other things that I'm going to mention that probably isn't top of mind, but maybe is. Ensure that you have a plan for yourself around how you're going to maintain your health and wellness. Because if you are not maintaining your health and wellness, I'm not sure how you're going to show up for yourself or anybody else. And in that plan, make sure that you're very purposeful on having spiritual goals around, like, what is the growth? What's my purpose? What's the fulfillment that I want to have and feel around where I'm going in life general? And I trust me that even though these things are not direct, like you can't say, oh, it's a career strategy, these things are going to set you up to succeed because you have a bigger picture in mind and you're taking care of yourself. And I cannot stress as well how important it is to also not be afraid to talk about the financial pieces. Sometimes we run away from wanting to talk about money, and I don't want to seem a little shallow or that it's not all about the money, but it's very important too to ensure that you have your financial goals in there. And things will start to align as you start to build the career that will align with maybe financially what you want to achieve for yourself, the next role or position that is going to present itself to you or you are going to go after. Just be really holistic in building out that plan. So starting with the self-awareness and understanding where you are and truly building out a plan that is going to be not just where to go next, what is the next step, but how am I going to be a healthy individual and contributor to my life and the organization that I work for or the business that I'm going to be starting. There's both sides of this. Right? So that's what I want to just share around that.
Well, that's really powerful. Thank you so much, Crystal. Um, and I'm thinking through the concept of self-awareness, and we can have a whole session on this conversation on self-awareness, and going in silence, in meditation, asking the right questions. And it's interesting about the concept of insight, is really a concept of in spirit, to get in spirit, to get insights into something that it's not necessarily available, knowledge that you're not necessarily available to you, all of a sudden becomes available. I think that part, that self-awareness piece is extremely important, because often what most people do is they look outside
Yeah.
versus inside, and which is really the challenging concept, especially in today's world where there's so many distractions, social media. I could go on my Instagram timeline. I can't really get through it a whole day. 2 hours has passed, and there's so much coming at you, so much information, but then people need to take time to reflect and take time to have a relationship with yourself, and
Okay.
self-care is really extremely important. And on top of that, just like you mentioned, when we're building a career, we're talking about holistic approach to career goal setting, and you're not just looking at the job or the home you're trying to buy. You talk about having financial goals, which is extremely important, because most people don't like to talk about money. It's
Yeah.
extremely important. And then also your wellness, everything is a holistic view to career and to your goal, to your wellness. Thank you so much for sharing, Crystal. We're gonna keep this conversation going. This is really exciting. We're just getting warmed up, folks. We're gonna go to you next, Crystal. Sorry, Meryl. Meryl, next question is talking about keeping up with the pace of technology advancements, and keeping in mind, we just talked about how social media, there's so much going on these days, and we have our busy personal and professional lives, but then we also need to have, how do we integrate continuous learning, adapting to changes within the industry while still remaining focused on long-term career goals. So question for you, in an era of rapid technological change, how should professionals incorporate continuous learning and adaptability into their career roadmap?
Yeah, I think regardless of, what career you have, what line of business you fall under, I think it's always important to be keeping in touch with what's happening in your industry, right? Because that's going to help you in terms of the adaptability you have with being able to move in the organization with different roles and be able to sell yourself because you're expressing that knowledge that you've learned. And so, because we're in such a high cost of living era right now, and we see so a lot of people coming up with coaching and courses and all these things, and I always try to tell people, like, the internet is there. We got access to more knowledge than anybody else. Pay for the things you got to pay for, which is the important stuff, your technical skills. If you're doing career switches, make that financial investment, and save up for it, and make sure that you're going through programs that folks are, you've done a little bit of a background check to make sure it's a good program, it's a good boot camp, whatever it is that you're doing or certification that you're getting, and that there's going to be a little bit of ROI. That doesn't have to be massive, but it can be simple things like whether you get your Scrum certifications or PMP and things like that. But there's also the low cost effort ways, right? Which are signing up for newsletters that people in your industry are out there writing. For example, I'm in payments and financial services. There's a guy who writes this fintech newsletter, and he has like the 411 on everything before it even, I guess, like, unless you want to read 50 million, newsletters and beta kit and Globe and Mail and all these things, you can sign up for his subscription and literally get the tips on everything, the mergers, everything that's happening in that fintech and payment space. So that's a really good one. Attending conferences is always a good thing. Going into the panels and the sessions where maybe you're not a little bit familiar with the topic, something that's different, and networking with those hosts, because there's low effort ways or low cost ways to learn that. And then again, there's the more high end, which is investing in courses, investing in certifications, staying top of mind of that, participating in chat rooms. There's a lot of Discord, rooms out there for people who are discussing what's hot and what's new. So those are just some of the ways in which I tend to stay on top of things. I don't know if Crystal has any other outlets that she's maybe used that she maybe wants to share for folks, especially that want to go into a different industry.
I think you summarized it well, Meryl. And, I think we're in the era of a lot of audio stuff. So make sure you connect in with some podcasts. There's so many amazing podcasts out there. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but I just love podcasts. It's a way of me being able to get information on a go train ride or, at the gym. It's just podcasts. I love them.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you mentioned the GO train because we're in this age where there's so much going on. We're just going. So if you can't, just listen to something while you're on that trip, on that GO train ride. Or perhaps if incorporating continuous learning is really challenging, especially in today's world where things are so busy. Just carving out time. Maybe you need to wake up an hour or two early to get it done. And just blocking that time, I think is really extremely important to be more intentional about it. And I think as Meryl mentioned, there's so many platforms that you can utilize to actively engage, understand what's hot, what's in your industry, connect. We're going to talk more about all that connection piece. I think Meryl, you want to say something?
Yes, one thing that I forgot to mention, and this is more so, I think, more prevalent in the tech space than probably, at least in financial services. A lot of times when you're negotiating job offers, they will sometimes give you a stipend for things like conferences and learning. So make sure that if you do have access to that or you have the ability to negotiate, a little $2,000 or whatever here and there for that, that you're taking advantage of it. Because a lot of employers, like I worked in the banks, they don't really do that. They have a database of free courses and stuff, but they won't pay for you to go to a conference unless somebody in your line of business does. So I would definitely say make sure that you're taking advantage of those resources because I think sometimes people in tech forget that they're one of the few industries that have access to that and not everywhere else does. And it's really a good part to have.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much, Beryl. And that comes to the conclusion of our first round of questions, which is we started with the foundation, which is understanding some of the core foundations when it comes to goal setting or building your career blueprint. We've talked about things around the practical ways to set ambitious goals. We talked about some of the fears and, in revisiting and adjusting your career goals. We've talked about self-awareness. And we've also talked about the importance of continuous learning. So we're going to stay with you, Meryl. And the next round, we're going to be talking about the challenges that people come across, challenges that people face. Now, it's easy. I mean, people say set up your goal, put together your career roadmap. But then when the going gets tough, they say the tough gets going. But there are challenges. There are real challenges. And the first question I'm going to ask you, Meryl, is really regarding dealing with persistent self-doubt. And that's real. Talking to a lot of people. My nephew and I were talking on New Year's, and we're having a roundtable talking about personal goals, things that we're looking to grow from. And he mentioned that, lack of confidence, self-doubt. And this happens to the best of us because even when you've achieved a lot, some people feel guilty. They feel like they need to work a lot because this self-doubt and fear of not meeting our expectations and the struggles of acknowledging or celebrating personal success. So, question for you, Meryl. What strategies have you found effective for overcoming imposter syndrome or fear of failure while pursuing ambitious career goals?
Yeah, there's a quote, and I can't remember who says it, but it goes something like to remind yourself always, any room that you find yourself in is a room that you belong. And that's something that you always remember when you're feeling that little bit of imposter syndrome, when you're sometimes the one of only in the room, or you're the youngest or the only woman or that type of thing. It's just something that I always like to cling to and remind myself of. I also believe that confidence comes from doing, right? And sometimes you kind of gotta, I guess, get on your Kanye a little bit, for lack of a better term, in terms of having a little bit of an ego and reminding yourself of all of the things that you've done in your career to sit at that table. So sometimes you kind of have to channel that a little bit. But what I like to do with like junior people that work with me, that struggle with confidence is, one, I always tell them, don't be afraid to advocate for getting opportunities to build up your confidence. So for example, if I see somebody that's junior and they're afraid to talk in a meeting, I tend to put them in a situation where they have to present something. And when I see somebody that has maybe a more confident attitude that might sometimes, overtake a meeting, I'll sort of prompt them to sort of shut them down. Because especially with women, we tend to be a little bit more, sometimes can be a bit more timid early on in our careers before we sort of learn to find our voice sometimes. So those are things that I like to do, is like finding opportunities that are small, that give you the confidence to learn how to speak up, learn how to brag about, the accomplishments that you have, even the way that you have your one-on-one with your boss and you're talking about, what are things that you've accomplished. Don't be afraid to brag. And those are the things that I teach junior people. And I think as you get older, you're accustomed to that. You know how to, it's not bragging when it's fact, is what they say, right? So you know how to sit there and put forth all the accomplishments, and that's where your confidence ultimately sometimes comes from, because you know what you bring to the table. So those are some of the exercises that I like to do with people to make them feel comfortable. It's just making sure that you're vocalizing if you need support, if you're struggling, because if you have a good boss, they'll make access to those things for you. And then making sure that you're continually putting yourself into situations where you can build that confidence through doing things, because that's where confidence ultimately comes from.
Love it, love it. Confidence comes from doing massive action. When Tony Robbins would say, massive action, consistent basis, confidence, you build confidence. It's like going to the gym, you build muscle memories. One of the key things that we always encourage folks in our program, we have a mentorship program, is giving them opportunity to lead meetings, to speak in those meetings, to find themselves, find their voice. And I know one of the students in our program once said to me that this opportunity has really helped her to become poised, because I think one of the biggest challenges people have, especially when it comes to speaking, and we talk about all these technical skills, but the soft skills are the most important skills that can help navigate career, help to build relationships, help to build bridges. So I really. And I also love that you shared around, I belong in any room I find myself. And, I think all that's, coupled with bringing our full self to the table really does help in overcoming the imposter syndrome. Krista, I noticed you on mute. You had your mic on mute. Did you want to add to this?
Yep, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yes, I do want to add to this, because this is something I do want to let everyone that's listening or is going to watch a replay or whatever the case is going to be, that I have been in my career for 20 odd years and I still have those moments today. So be kind to yourself and give yourself grace. I want to say that, you started to touch on it, that the young lady said she's more poised. I do think that it could be of value for folks to think about doing speaking courses. Or I know people are like, I want to say Toastmasters. Toastmasters is amazing at allowing you to see, or allowing you to learn how to think on your feet and respond to questions or comments, or just have those engaging dialogue that is sometimes hard for some folks. I wasn't able to do that at the beginning of my career at all. I had to work myself up. But I think things like Toastmasters and learning those speaking skills and just getting comfortable and just having those impromptu conversations, it will really help. And limiting beliefs are real. They're real, and they're often tied to ingrained subconscious beliefs that we have that we don't even realize we have. So, as you have the conversation with your nephew, or you're having conversations with anybody on this chat, is just being aware of trying to intercept them. And I don't know if it's like pinching yourself or whatever the case may be, just let's just become aware, and even just the awareness is enough to get over the hump of creating that new belief and belief system about yourself and what you can do.
Well, I mean, this is amazing. We can keep going. I noticed that, Crystal, you kind of pivoted to the subconscious belief, and I think it's interesting because we had this. I think I was talking to you, both of you, the other night. So we talked about this IG Live that I hosted, and we talked to the folks on IG Live, and we talked about the concept of the mindsets and the belief system, and that is not your fault. Maybe you have some limiting beliefs. It's not really your fault. It's really a product of what we've been exposed to since childhood. Now, the important thing is, and the actually good news is that we have the power to rewrite that. It's kind of like a software. It's a programming. So now you have the power to write the code, and you can put in everything you want to put in it, but it requires practice. We're going to get into more of this conversation. Thank you so much, Meryl. I'm going to keep it moving, keep the show moving. Our next question is going to be to you, Crystal. Crystal, this really talks about facing unexpected obstacles that, could affect your career progression, and adjusting career plans when reality doesn't match expectation. This happens a lot because we have these goals, and 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, I'm wondering, okay, where am I? How far am I going? So question to you is, can you share a time when you encountered a significant career hurdle and how you navigated it using your career blueprint or roadmap as a guide?
Okay. Yes, I have a couple. I have like recent ones. I have things from the past, but I do want to share a time when I actually made a very massive move, literally physically moving from Canada to the US and going down there to work for a home building company, and they're building up their technology or space out there, or their IT space. And I went as a way, it was a way to get that expansion of my skill set. Plus, I've been a public servant for so long. I want to demonstrate that I could work outside of the public service. I could do private stuff, right? Anyway, so long story short, I got to the company and it was horrible in the way that the person I reported to was not to be leading people in any way. And so at first, I thought it was just all about me. And it was very difficult. And it's so interesting because how I navigated that situation is that I kind of stepped back and I was observing how she was interacting with other folks. And I realized it wasn't me. It was a way of her leadership style that needed a lot of improvement. But you know what? I had to go into action. I realized that this is not healthy for me. And I started chatting to folks, networking, letting people know what I can do and what I bring to the table, having those coffee chats, just really connecting with people. And I was actually forced to do so in such a significant way because one, I'm in a country that I've never lived before. I know it's the US. But it's different. I had really no friends. So it put me in a place where it's like, I really have to build my network. And in doing so, I was able to navigate to find another role within the organization. But it was difficult. So what I want to say is always go back to your why. Why am I here? I'm here because I want to expand my skills. It may not be with this person that I report to. So what could be the next thing I can do? I started chatting with folks and I eventually ended up somewhere else. And that's when I started to blossom there. And so one thing I do want to also mention, always go with your gut. I knew I wasn't supposed to take this job. My gut told me, I don't think this is a place for you. But I so wanted to, move to the States and get the job that I'm like, okay, I'll just take it and then I'll find something else. I should have not taken it. I should have steadfast and found the right opportunity that resonated with my gut. But I was eventually able to work through it. But I want to just share with people, don't underestimate the power of what your gut and your intuition, I don't know, some people use it interchangeably, is telling you about situations. Don't suppress it. Listen to it. It's telling you something. Okay, so that's what I want to say about that. It was rough, but I got through it.
Yeah, super. Well, thanks so much for sharing,
Yeah.
Crystal. And I think, a lot of people go through these challenges, and often we find ourselves in a situation where we're almost in a box. And it's really important, like you mentioned, to seek out information elsewhere, talk to other people, and following your gut is extremely important as well, because often it's the ego. I want that job. I want that big job. And even if your mind is saying, this is probably not for me, but then the ego is saying, hey, guess what? It's the US, it's a big market. You should go for it. So really, really insightful share, Crystal. We're going to go to you, Meryl. Next question really focuses on the concept of navigating anxiety of making the wrong career choices, coping with pressure of career decisions that could affect your long-term goals. So the question is, what advice would you give for dealing with the uncertainty and fear that often accompany major career decisions? Again, there are a lot of folks on the call that are in situations where they're trying to navigate into a new career. They've even started the process, and there's doubts that comes in, there's pressure from family and society, all that combined together. And, but if you can just shed some light on how do people deal with uncertainty and fear that comes with major career decisions?
I think there's always a certain degree of fear, because you never know what the job's going to be like until you get there. But what I would say is having some form of a career plan. And again, it still goes back to rolling with the punches, right? Usually what I do is I don't have, in my mind, I always used to be like, okay, I know that I want to be an executive. What kind of executive, where it didn't really matter. I just knew the end goal was get into the executive level at some point. But I always sort of thought that every job that I took, I needed to be able to justify what is the one or two jobs I can get after that. So I never was fussed about the title. I never was fussed about the money. I was always, I mean, I was a little bit fussed about the money, but it wasn't like the main factor. I always used to think, okay, this is a great opportunity. But if I hate this job in 6 months or a year or 2 years, because typically I tend to change jobs every 2 to 3 years, what can I do after that with this? How does that complement? And I think when you think about the roles that you accept or go into, with that, that helps you have a little bit of less nerves, because you're not just taking a job to take a job. You're thinking about this a bit more constructively, to say, okay, I can't, like I said, for me it was, I can't have this career that I wanted in tech, but how do I take sales to go in product? What does that mean for my career? What does that role in product mean for the career that I took after that, which is going into a more of an innovation focused role, right? And what doors does that open up for me? So I think that helps to calm your nerves, because you're taking the emotion out of it and you're being a little bit more analytical in your thinking. And I think that's how we should be assessing our careers, is not being focused on, I'm desperate to buy a house because I have this life goal of buying a house by 35. So I'm going to take this job that pays a lot, even though it sucks and I hate it all the time. It's more just thinking, what can I do with this long term to get to whatever that end goal is professionally? And then that should feed other parts of your life too, in terms of what does the work balance look like? What does the money look like? Because we want to have a holistic sort of view. But I think ultimately it comes down to your career plan that's going to settle those nerves a little bit and take the emotion out of it. For myself, maybe Crystal has a different framework, because that she's applied in the past, but that's ultimately how I've rolled, every single time. And just always knowing that I have a good track record prior. So even if this doesn't work out, I have something else to fall on. Has also always helped me in calming my nerves when I'm thinking through major decisions that I want to make.
I agree with everything that Meryl said. She actually was going to add the piece around the fact that I have a track record. It's a journey. And this could be just a blip. in the journey. So that's okay. I got things to fall back on and I know where I'm going. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mara. That's really insightful. We're gonna keep it moving because obviously time is of the essence, and we'll still have quite a number of questions to cover. Again, we encourage you to participate. We want to hear from you. If you have any questions you want to direct towards Meryl or Crystal, please feel free to use the chat. We'd love to hear from you. This next question, Crystal, really is about managing the conflicts between future aspiration and current job fulfillment, prioritization of well-being. This is extremely important in today's world, well-being. Can you, and for you being an expert in this space, can shed some light on how do you balance the pursuit of long-term career goals with the need for immediate job satisfaction and well-being?
So we're all experts when it comes to our well-being because we know what we need. We're the ones that know what we need the best. So just want to say that. So I would say that I have to start with how I'm feeling right now. Because if I am not connected to it's almost like re-engineering the question. If I'm not connected to what I'm doing now and satisfied, and my well-being is suffering, I can't get to my long-term career goal. It just won't happen. So I say that for the whole balancing effect, yes, you have your big and you dream big, right? Like I said to my mom, I'm climbing the walls. However, in climbing the walls, you have to make sure that where you are is serving you well. Yes, as someone that's new, you're going to be doing some of the grunt work at the beginning if you're new in your career or so forth. That sort of sometimes comes with the territory, but maybe not so much nowadays, but maybe back when I started. But the key thing is that you do really have to make sure that you're connected to the work you're doing and you like it. If you don't like it, if you're looking at the tangible work, if you don't like it, you gotta change. If you're not into accounting, do not continue to be an accountant. Do something different. It will eat you alive, or just it will eat at you. But when it comes to people, most of the time we're trying to navigate the people in the workplace that we can fix. So you may love the work you do. Like I'm a project manager at heart. I love managing projects. I love transformation. Put me anywhere. I will do that work like gladly. But it's the people component that you have to make sure that you're reporting to people that are good, supportive, good leaders, and help you grow. So as you are, navigating, making sure you have those ingredients in place, and then always checking in with yourself of how am I feeling? How am I doing? We talked about earlier about it's a lot of inside work, and I know this is so hard. We really have to be able to validate ourselves and not look for the validation external. There is this thing called performance management or what you call it, performance planning and bonuses at the end of the year that is tied to what you do and how you've performed and all that stuff. But you have to really understand and be validated and you need to validate yourself of how well you are doing, because sometimes it doesn't translate. And if you're translating what you know and how you performed into bonuses or accolades from your boss, it may not translate. So please do not depend on that. So I know I kind of went on a tangent around long-term career goals and immediate, but I guess my key message here is ensure that your immediate environment is working for you, because if it's not working for you, you're not going to get to the long term.
Hey, well, super. Well, thanks so much, Crystal. I love the fact that you share the love what you do. I have this little sticky note on my fridge. It goes, I do what I love what I do. The moment I stop loving what I do, then I stop getting energy from it, and it becomes really difficult. And as you mentioned, it's the people that you work with that you have to navigate. And I think that part is really important. Meryl, I'd like you to chime in here because I've seen scenarios where people get a new job. They love this career path, but then the manager they're reporting to, the people they're working around, it's like a nightmare working with them. And I've also had the experience before in my past where I would get back from work and I'm always talking about this boss with my wife all the time. I couldn't stop talking about her every
I've had
time I
many
get
of
back.
those.
How do you deal with that? And I think that's part of well-being because we spend a huge amount of our time at work. And if you find yourself in a scenario where you can't even see to the point where you can't even see any good from that person. And every time it's almost as if they're passive aggressive, they're pointing at you, even when they're talking to everybody. How do you navigate that? And I know it starts with self-awareness and there's a lot that goes into it. What are your thoughts, Meryl?
Um, Managing up is one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people have to learn. Because you can only control so much. Like at the end of the day, you can love your job and like we said, like the environment cannot be great, but if you can figure out um how to manage up, how to manage the people that directly impact you, whether that's your boss, stakeholders on your project, whatever that is, you can sort of set your boundaries with some of those people, right? In terms of how you communicate, when you're going to be, what do you call it? In terms of like what you're going to endure. Because
Mhm.
and you also have to know your limits, right? Because one of the things I think sometimes we also tend to do is we'll stay in an environment that's not healthy for us because the money is really good, the benefits are great, whatever. We always give ourselves some sort of an excuse to sort of stay in a toxic environment, if you will. And so I think it's also knowing what your limitations are, and when you're willing to make that pivot, and that's finding a new job, or in my case, I realized I was overly burnt out and I had to take a step back from my career for the last year. But it really comes down to managing the folks that are around you. And if you're in an environment where the managing up and the people are not changing, again, like just walk away from it, because sometimes people have things in their outside lives that they bring to the office, and your boss could be going through a divorce or something, and unfortunately you guys are the people who they take it out on with the micromanaging or whatever, the way that they're treating you. And so sometimes you just have to, do that cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it to stay in this environment if somebody's attitude or the way that they manage or the way that they work is not really aligning with how you like to work, and whether it's time to move on. And if not, if you think you can work with it, then figuring out how do you manage up, and how do you do it without them realizing that you're sort of kind of, navigating, or I'm trying to look for a better word that's other than sort of managing, but manipulating, or, just sort of positioning things so that it works well within your favor, and learning how to play that game really, really well.
Absolutely. And this is such an important topic
Yeah.
when it comes to, the experiences that people have. And, we're talking about well-being, and which is really important. We talk to our PMs, we talk about the importance of emotional intelligence. What may appear as a difficult situation or person with great emotional intelligence, you can turn it around into something more manageable for you. Because we know the job market is tough. If we get a job today, I'm not just going to say I'm going to quit my job and go find another job. Maybe that's another 6 months. Who knows how long it takes, because market is tough. So there's also the concept of how do we live with the situation in a way that we're able to manage and turn things around, and for good.
Yeah, and I would say don't always have an abundant mindset. Like the reality is the job market is hard, but don't also trap yourself in a situation that's very difficult for fear of finding something else. Um, so do the managing up, do the exercises you need to do, engage a mentor or somebody else who works in the department to understand how to manage folks. And if that doesn't work, start making your exit strategy, which is looking for another job, looking for another role in a different department, whatever that looks like for you. I just like to always remind people not to, because I used to be that person that would take a job or stay in a situation. And I had to learn that that's also a little bit of a lack of abundant mindset, because you're like, this job is so good, it's so amazing, my resume's, and you're just sitting there and dealing with toxicity, and that's affecting your well-being. It's affecting your mental health, your physical health, sometimes your financial health, because sometimes these jobs don't even pay that well. So you really just have to make that calculation on how much you're gonna endure, in a sense.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for sharing, Mara. I love the abundance mindset, because I think that there's a multiple layer to that. It's not even just leaving that one job. It's even around the decision on what career, uh, path do I want to follow? Do I want to remain on this job? Maybe there's this job that I'm working on right now, and I aspire to something better. So I think all that's, anyways, we're going to keep this going. We have the next round of questions. We're going to transition to our final round of questions, or well, maybe second to the last round of questions. This is talking about practical strategies for success. I'm going to start with you, Crystal. And a question, this is very, very important because it's around finding the right mentorship opportunities, and mentors, actionable career steps. What mentorship experiences have you found have profoundly influenced your career, and how do you integrate mentorship into career planning?
Okay, I love this question. So early in my career, I had a boss that had such great interest in me. And she was like talking about me, navigating, almost planning my career for me, because she had such great aspirations for me. I'm so grateful to her. And it's interesting, she was my sponsorship. And so I want to tell the group that's listening, and whoever's listening, is that there's mentorship and there's sponsorship. Mentorship is helping individual, like, I attain a goal, and you sit down, and that could be informal or informal, where you chat and you work things through and you give them advice to maybe get from A to B, or solve an issue that they're in, or get out on the other side. Sponsorship is when somebody's literally talking about you. Sorry, this is my daughter in the background. Literally talking about you in rooms that you're not in, because they are trying to make sure that you are being elevated or moving to the next opportunity. And there's a big difference. They're talking about you in rooms that you're not in favorably, is sponsorship. And then mentorship is helping you to solve and move through issues. Okay, so I want to just distinguish that. So I had a sponsor at the beginning of my career, and it was informal, but she was great. And she moved me from a business analyst under her leadership right into management. That was, like, I would say, at least 8 years of sponsorship that she wanted to move my career forward. And so mentorship is also very important. And I think what happens is, with mentorship, it's about being able to move that mentorship relationship into hopefully a sponsorship relationship. And so in mentorship, I have mentors in my workplace and I have mentors outside of my workplace. The OPS is a great place, but it's a very different place. So I like to have mentors outside, just to keep connected with what's happening outside of a government setting, right? So, and then also within our environment, don't be afraid, or within your environment, if there's formal mentorship opportunities, sign up for them. Sign up for those formal mentorship opportunities where you can, get in front of people and talk and sell. Like, I've heard Meryl mention selling a couple of times. Let's not I listened to podcasts, and selling is the number one skill you have to be successful. And it's not it's not always about entrepreneurship. It's about selling yourself too. So you have to, like, really build that skill. And so keep those mentorship opportunities strong, even if it's formal and then it ends after a year or so. Keep connected. Don't just show up when you need something. Connect, even if it's as simple as sending your holiday greeting or your happy New Year, whichever New Year's you celebrate. Just keep connecting and show up and show interest in where they're at, so that when there is a need to potentially tap in and move, have a objective that you want to achieve, they can show up for you. So it's been pretty good for my career. Actually, in the last year, I've done significant mentorship to help me move into another career, another role that I'll be going into in the short term. So,
okay, super. Well, we do have a question in the chat for you, Crystal. We're gonna circle back to that. But
okay.
I just want to acknowledge some of the things you shared around the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I think that's extremely important. You get mentors, but then there are people that are also your sponsors. So knowing the difference is key. So you're not asking your sponsor to be your mentor. It's really important. And you touch on something that I think is a real good segue to the next question, which is around genuine relationship building. Don't just show up when you need something. Check in. Find a way to connect in a human fashion. And this question to you, Crystal, Meryl, is networking is often cited as key to career advancement. Can you share innovative networking strategies that have worked for you, especially in a digital age?
Yeah, so I would say I do a lot of my networking through a lot of the volunteer opportunities and boards that I sit on. I found that was a really great way for me to connect with people, because I didn't just, especially when you're moving to new cities, you don't necessarily only want to connect and network with people that are in the same company as you. You want to build an extended network. So I found that through professional associations, attending those types of events like this, right, where you're getting to hear from people, and then moving that to an online conversation. So during the pandemic, I'm a very introverted person, so I used to hate going to networking events and having to walk up to strangers and make small talk. And I'm like 4'11", so it's like you're introverted and you're small, and like you're having to walk up to like strangers that are giants and talk to them, and it can be very intimidating at times. And so I love that during the pandemic, everyone was so open to having one-on-one conversations. You could literally go on LinkedIn and send somebody a message or attend an event like this and then say, hey, Crystal, love this. I'm also working in government. I'm struggling. Would love, put out a key thing that they said so that you kind of, boost their ego a little bit to show that you're paying attention to them. And you'll be surprised at how many people will have that quick one-on-one Zoom call with you. It's so easy these days. It's less time than me going and meeting you at a Starbucks. So a lot of people are open to that. And then you get one-on-one time with the person. You're able to actually have a real conversation. You're actually able to genuinely connect. I think people are a little bit zoomed out now, so there may be a little bit of hesitation, but I always encourage people to do that. And also, when you get in front of people, don't waste their time. Don't just, shoot the shit in terms of conversation. Go in there with a structured, okay, I got 15 minutes. This is what I want to talk about, or this is the impression that I want to leave with people. I get a lot of messages from people who will just say, hey, I saw you at this event. I'm looking for a mentor. Don't do that. Don't send that kind of message. One, the person's not going to mentor you because they don't know you. Two, you have to build rapport with somebody for them to want to extend that time with you. So it's understanding sort of how to navigate those nuances of networking, and building a rapport. And to like Crystal's point earlier, selling yourself. You want a mentor, you want a sponsor. Why should I be invested in you? There are so many junior people that want me to mentor them. Why you? And so you kind of have to like sell yourself a little bit. Don't go in with a sales pitch, but it's more of just finding ways that you can align with people. And if you're young, I would say this to young people, you guys are the luckiest, because when you're in university, listen, all these execs, they look at you and they're like, oh my God, this little girl, I used to be her. And I wish people had told me this and that in the last 20, 30 years of my career. I'm going to take her under my wings. I always tell college students, you guys are the key ones that can get the highest executives more so than the rest of us that are in the workforce. So take advantage and use that as much as you can. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Meryl. Meryl, really insightful. I love what you shared when you talked about the volunteer opportunities. It's really important because I always talk to people and they say, it's not always about take a different approach versus what's in it for me. Question is, how can I serve? And when we find ourselves in those situations, I think a lot of my mentors, a lot of my networking also has come through volunteer opportunities where I get to meet people from diverse backgrounds, people in the government, people in the private sector, and business leaders. And I think it really shapes our exposure. Also helps you get out there in an environment that is not necessarily your core environment and opens you up to different perspective and things that are possible. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Meryl. Um, so we're going to go to, there's a question in the chat directed to Crystal. Crystal, we're going to quickly just get through this question. I know we're almost out of time here. And the question is, it says anonymous attendee. Can you explain how you discern between trusting your guts or instincts to avoid roles that don't align with your career path and being open to opportunities for growth and learning, even when they diverge from your current trajectory?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question to whoever put it through. What I find when it comes to discerning, I'm going to say intuition versus, okay, I'm going to say discerning fear versus opportunity, is that your intuition to me shows up in a way that you feel expanded by what it's telling you. And so yes, while it's diverging, you're like, and like it's saying that it's divergent from your current trajectory, you also feel a sense of expansiveness within you by this intuitive nudge, if you want to call it, or intuitive direction that's being presented to you. So I would say, look at if you're feeling expanded or contracted when something comes to you. And if you're feeling expanded, really consider going in that direction. But if you're feeling like contracted, like, I'm not feeling like good about this, and it's like a not so good feeling, really listen to that too, and potentially avoid doing the role if that be the case. So I know that sounds very, I hope that helps explain, but I look at it how I feel, expansive versus contracted. I hope that helps in answering.
Amazing, amazing. And that just, it reminds me of a book I read by Wayne Dyer about goals and manifesting your goals. And one of the similar response was around when you're making decisions and that may affect your career, the one that brings peace is the one that you should go with. And if the decision is bringing turbulence and you feel uncomfortable, now it's tricky because sometimes taking a big step could also bring in similar feelings. So, but I think it's your response. It's perfectly right. I think the instincts, the mind guides you. Eventually, you wake up, maybe sleep over it. Next day, you feel you know what direction to go. Thanks for sharing, Crystal. We're almost out of time here, so we're just gonna go through a couple of questions and then we'll have our recap and just wrap up the call. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Our next question is for you, Crystal. This is a very, very important question. Could you share examples of habits or practice you've adopted that has consistently contributed to your career growth and success?
Okay, so I'm going to say something very career focused and something very not career focused. The first thing is that, to what Meryl was talking about, consistent networking. It has been really helpful in my career growth. I literally have a spreadsheet I look at my spreadsheet for this last 2023, there was about 20 to 30 people that I consistently kept in contact with. And I literally said the person's name, the date, the objective of the combo. Sometimes it's about getting to know somebody, or sometimes it's about an ask, and what were the next steps. And having that has been very helpful in my career growth. Okay. So I think networking is like amazing and key. It's not easy, but it's very worth it for me, at least. And then the second thing I'm going to say is how you start your day is how you end your day. A strong morning routine is very important, I think, for my success and being able to show up in the workplace, at home, for my business, for friends, for family. And my strong morning routine is that I wake up at 5 a.m. I know people are like, why are you doing up at that time? But it's the time that I can get up and have 1 hour. I can get a solid hour to myself without being concerned that maybe my daughter will wake up and interrupt that time. And so I get up at 5 a.m., prayer practice. I write out who I am every day, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I also have a short meditation or breath exercise during that time. And so I think we're pretty clear on what prayer is for me. But writing out who I am every day has been really instrumental in this last year, where it's been pretty turbulent in my last year corporately. Writing out who I am intelligent, I am capable, I am an executive that makes impact in and makes impact to the people I serve. I am a great mother, I'm a great provider. Like, being able to write these things out, because on the days when you don't believe it, at least I'm writing it. And then when those situations that may present in the workplace or in life, it just subconsciously it's sinking in and it's working through me and out into the world. So I'd say have a very strong morning routine, again, whether it be exercise or sitting with yourself or listening to the professional development podcast. Just have a good morning routine for you, and then networking.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I couldn't agree more. The morning routine is extremely, extremely important. I talk to my mentors about that. My mentees, about having a regular morning routine. It does as a way of helping you cultivate that mindset and also a belief system. We talk about having that belief system because when we say repetition is greater form of learning. So thanks so much, Crystal. We're gonna go to you next, Meryl. Meryl, next question is, when facing pivotal moments in your career, how do you embrace the uncertainty of risk? A lot of people are here thinking, how do I go from one career to another? Could you share a personal story where embracing such a risk truly transformed your career path?
I feel like I have a very high risk tolerance when it comes to work because I just kind of fall into it. And I think part of that is I'm part of the first generation of kids that went from segregated schools to non-segregated schools in South Africa because of apartheid. So I remember as a kid, my mom always used to talk about when you get an opportunity, network, when you get an opportunity, do something, because it's better to fail and then to not have given, because she never had opportunities. My older sister never had opportunities. They couldn't go to university, couldn't get, these white collar jobs, right? So I think that's where I have a huge appetite for risk. Even coming to Canada, I came during the last recession. I came with $500 and I knew nobody here. I didn't even go to school here. I graduated back home, came and said, I'm going to look for a job, and everyone thought I was mad. So that's why I feel like I have a very high threshold for, I'm going to just do it and see what happens. And I think that has sort of what I said earlier, over time, you kind of feel a bit more secure and confident in taking a risk, because now I'm like, okay, then I was a fresh grad. I had nothing to fall back on. Now I'm like, okay, well, I have a career. I've done things. So if this doesn't work out, I can fall back to that. I can fall back into sales, or I can fall back into product if the next role is not what I want to do. And I think that's part of, again, having your North Star, having your career plan, thinking through what are those calculated risks that you're going to take. Because I take less now. Like now I wouldn't just, hop and take a job in the middle of nowhere with no connections or nothing. But I think you learn to make more calculated decisions over time. And I would say the risks have always been worthwhile for me because, again, it's helped me make great money because I took those risks. It's helped me have a great career where I've done things that others my age have not done, in banking, for example, in helping banks accomplish certain things that people who are deep into their careers are doing as executives. So those risks have always paid off for me. And I think that's just something people have to keep in mind. It's just a job. We're not doing surgery, guys. Like it's just a job. If it sucks, if it doesn't work out, you can go back to what you did before. Like that's the one thing we have to remember. We're not on the battlefield saving lives as surgeons, doctors beyond borders. We're just working in corporate. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks again for sharing your story, Meryl. This is really, really insightful. Crystal, you want to add something to that?
No, I just love Meryl's perspective. Like, let's just put it in perspective, people.
Right.
It's a job, and we all are great. We'll figure it out. Like, thank you for reminding us that.
Super amazing, amazing. Well, thank you, once again for sharing. We're at the tail end of the round table. We appreciate this amazing group of panelists that we have on the call, and we also want to thank all the participants. Before we go, we'd love to hear from the panelists, perhaps any sort of recap, any sort of takeaway. Now, in reflecting on your own career journey and the insights shared today, Crystal, what single piece of advice would you give someone at the start of designing or reevaluating their career blueprint for long-term success?
So the first thing I would just connect with yourself first and ask yourself, what would I prefer? What would I like? And really answer that question. Start from like, what would I like? And then from there, like, let that drive you, right? Because most likely the first thing that you say is what you want. Everything else after that is probably going to be like the reasons why you shouldn't. So really just connect with, or the things after that will probably kind of be more of the tamed approach or potentially the limiting beliefs coming in. So connect with what you want first and ask why. And then the other thing is just remember this is a journey. Meryl said it great. Like it's a journey. You're able to change and it's okay to change. Don't beat yourself up to change. This is just because you are a thinking, complex human being that has different preferences based on where you are in life. And you'll figure it out. And don't be afraid to go down that path.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal. Appreciate your leadership on this call. Your insight has been amazing, and I strongly believe our participants have gained a lot from you today. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to pose the same question to you, Meryl. Meryl, perhaps if you want to share your thoughts, one single advice that you want people to leave with today.
I think mine will be short and sweet. Be flexible, guys. Just be flexible. Don't be so rigid in your plan. A lot of careers don't have a linear trajectory, right? We're not trying to be lawyers or doctors or certain careers where there's not a lot of wiggle room. It's kind of you have to take these steps to get to partner in the firm or whatever. So I think just be flexible, open yourself up to the opportunities, and to be honest, from what I've seen, sometimes being a generalist in your field is actually the best thing that can happen to you when you do a lot of different things, because it allows for you to take on more roles. It allows for you to excel faster because you've got so many tools in your toolbox that you can pull from versus having sort of that very linear path in your career. So it's just that will be my piece of advice to everyone. It's just don't be overly rigid with your career plan.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you once again, Meryl, for all the insights. Thanks for your steadiness. And thanks for sharing your story. It's remarkable. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. We'd love to hear more from you. We'd love to have you back. I want to thank all the participants for joining today. It's been a privilege to share this space with such an insightful group of panelists and such an engaged audience as well. Your questions, your contributions have enriched our discussion, highlighting the diverse perspective and experiences that shape our career journeys. So as we close, remember that the path to success is a personal journey, one that you design and navigate with intention, resilience, and adaptability. And for all the participants, may the insights shared today serve as a guiding light as you forge your path forward. So here's to contributing to the growth and success of everyone. Our mandate at the PM Roundtable is to create an avenue for career growth and mentorship. Ultimately, our goal is to raise leaders, and we definitely hope that today's roundtable has contributed to that agenda. So on behalf of our team at Ole Consulting, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone for participating at today's roundtable. And thank you to the panelists and all the participants. Until next time, be well, stay safe, and bye for now. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good weekend.